So I'm the dangerous guy, okay?
Bring it.
Like, it's not good when they clear all the singles and youngers out. So I'm fixing to go down. Wow. So I am super excited to be here. Anybody with me? I have really been enjoying my time here and taking in all that there is to take in here and experiencing God and feeling God and spending some time with God. Man, look at this. I just noted I got a sword up here at my disposal. I don't know where that came from. I better leave my hands off of that, but that looks exciting. Whew. Almost lost my train of thought there. Anyway, so how many of you have been to an event, a seminar, or I don't know, some kind of event where they had a session, a time devoted strictly to the topic of sex? Like not marriage and sex, but like the topic of sex. How many? Oh, not too bad. We got a few here. Okay, good. Next time you guys hear that question, everybody will be raising their hand until you're done through this one. But anyway, so my name is James Polkinghorn, and that's a unique name. Maybe you already knew that. I did a little research just the other day, actually yesterday. In 2010, there was 300 and some Polkinghorns in the United States. So there's not a lot of us. So you're really privileged. You got one here. A lot of people think it is a Indian name, like running bear, flying eagle, Polkinghorn makes sense, right? But that's actually not what it is. It is an English place name from the Pool of Kinhern is where the name came from. Some rich guy gave some land to one of his best servants. See, these Polkinghorns are pretty good people. And he gave a big hunk of land to him. And back in those days, if you didn't have any land, your name didn't get wrote down. But when you had land, your name got wrote down. And so he gave this piece of land that had the pool on it, a pool of Kinhern, which was a pool by the mines, in which, incidentally, I'm the first generation not to be directly involved in mining, because my ancestry is miners. And so, yes, he became known as so-and-so from the pool of Kinhern, and to this day, now it is Polkinghorn, not a poking horn. Interestingly enough, my mom and dad went over to Cornwall, England, not this last September, but the one before, and they actually found and went to and walked on and looked around on that piece of land, and to this day it's known as Polkinghorn Manor. That's the sign. My dad took that picture, so that's pretty cool. Anyway, the guy that owns it today is not a Polkinghorn, but he knew a little bit of the story, and so he said he's going to keep it Polkinghorn Manor. I actually don't know what his last name is, but it's even spelled right. I was speaking at an event one time, and they had my name on the schedule 3 times, and it was spelled differently every time. I did not make that up, that's true. Anyway, so I am a normal guy. I got a wife and 2 kids. This is my wonderful wife, Julie, my 10-year-old daughter, Letitia, and Logan, he's 8. And you can't tell it in the photo because it wasn't the case at the time. But my wife is heavily pregnant now, and I'm pretty excited about that. Logan is 8, so there's been a bit of a gap. Our saying is that these past 8 years there have been but 4 in our hive, but now by the 5th day of the 5th month there will be 5. So we're excited about that. May 4, we're going to be welcoming another one. Okay. So I said I'm a pretty average guy. I actually am. I work a day job. I build sheds. And sometimes I get opportunities to do things like this. And that's the most fun thing for me. If there is anything unique about me, it's that I'm sold out for Jesus. That is like, I have really been appreciating the Spirit that has been here, the God presence that has been here. And after all, you're really not here to hear from me. We're here to hear from God. I often say this when I talk, that I am not here to tickle your intellect as much as I am here to connect with your spirit, and through my spirit witnessing with your spirit, and the Holy Spirit witnessing with your spirit. Because the Bible says, by the Spirit of man we understand the things of men. So like you go to college, it's all about the things of men. intellect and reasoning, but it's by the Spirit that we know the things of the Spirit. Do I not have the exact wordage there, but you know what I'm talking about. And so in a time like this, I am so not interested in things of men. I am all about understanding and comprehending and grasping the things of the Spirit. So if there is anything that I seek to accomplish, it is to be used by the Spirit and for Him to be able to communicate through me. So our topic today, the title that you will find in your program is The Sex That God Made. And frankly, the reason that it said that it's there, is because I failed to actually give them a title. They just asked me to come talk about sex, and I was like, right on, I'll do it. And I never said what the title was, and so somebody made that up. But it's right, because part of our talk here is actually going to be really basic. And one of the things I want to do is look at the sex that God made versus the sex that man made, or the devil made. So it's a really good title. I'll tell you here in a slide or two what my title is. There are two entities putting out information on sex. There are only two entities, after all, in this world, and that is the kingdom of light and the kingdom of darkness. And the kingdom of darkness, on the subject of sex, in our society, in our culture, has a mountain of information out there. Do they not? Massive mountain. Any kind of sex you want to know about, experience, or see, they'll have it for you. You want to pursue the ultimate sex life, they'll tell you how to get there. And over here, we're on this side, right? Praise Jesus. But it seems like our mountain of information on sex that we are putting out there compared to that mountain is a molehill. And I am like done with that already. Right? Amen. So, really I think this thing should be reversed. At least the mountain should be the same size. Right? I mean, come on. So, because of that, I'm really excited to be here. Because we've not been saying so as much as we should have been, the devil has given the devil the opportunity to fill in the details. And we all know what they are. Our typical Mennonite concept of good parenting, if our parents get to the marriage altar, where did that come from? If our children get to the marriage altar, that was backwards, and we have taught them the definition of the three-letter word that starts with S and ends in X, and they know what that means, and they even know what happens when you get pregnant, like what you actually have to do, and how all that things, what happens, what goes on, and yada yada yada. We are good parents. We're like super parents. We have done it. We had the hard talk, right? Because, we all hear about these people who get to the marriage altar and don't know anything about that at all. So, and my 10-year-old and my 8-year-old know that stuff already. Okay? That is like the beginning. You have maybe got started and just barely. There is so much more that our teens, our early 20-somethings, when they're getting married, should know about. They should be able to answer questions, more questions than just that. Okay. I'm already getting excited. So, my title is The Ultimate Sex Life. We should be able to stand here on our mountain and say, this is the ultimate sex life. This is what it looks like. Uh-oh. I better put that down. This is what it looks like. This is how you get there. This is the real thing. This is authentic. This is what you really want. That over there on that mountain is empty. And when our kids get to the marriage altar, they should know exactly what this ultimate sex life thing is all about. And unfortunately, oftentimes they think they do, and they got it from that mountain. Okay. One thing that I want to get straight, you already saw that was coming, is that sex was not meant to be a private topic. Oh dear. So we have this concept that to talk about sex, and to even say the word, you can tell I'm not real bashful about saying the word. I'm the guy that nobody knows, lives pretty far away. And so, so they felt safe to bring him in here and talk about sex, and then we'll send him away again. In my world, sex was not meant to be a private topic. And I think I'm normal because I think in God's world, sex was not meant to be a private topic. We have this idea that it's awkward. You need to be careful about having mixed company in the crowd and even be careful about having children. We can get over the mixed, having a mixed crowd. We're all adults and we all know this is real, okay? And our children, we can get over that too, because if they're too young to get it and it's going to go over their head. You don't need to worry about it. Is that me? I thought I heard a noise. Maybe it's not me. If I got feedback, let me know. If I didn't use something different. Okay. If when we're talking about sex and we have children in the room and they do hear it and they start asking questions, well, then they're already old enough to hear these things and have some of those questions answered. We get the idea that we're going to try to keep them sheltered for a time. Try to keep them sheltered for a time. If I need to do something different, you let me know. I don't know. It sounds weird up here. We get the idea that if... Oh, it's just the speaker? Okay. All right. We get the idea that we're going to try to keep them sheltered until they're a little old enough and ready for this stuff, right? And I'm just going to tell you right now that's a bad idea. Because in that time when we think we're keeping them sheltered, they will get their answers from that mountain over there, and you don't want that. If sex was meant to be a private topic, God did a really bad job of hiding it. Like every person you meet is a product of somebody having sex. Like you actually can't get away from that. As far as I know, that's pretty much 100% statistics there. Furthermore, if you read the Bible, God is really not bashful about this stuff at all. There's a story in the Bible. I'm already running out of time. But there was a story in the Bible about a man having sex with a woman. And right before he orgasmed, he pulled out and he came on the ground and God killed him. That story is in the Bible in that detail. I did not make that up. You can read it. Like, God's not bashful about this stuff. Okay? I'm not even talking about Song of Solomon yet. Okay. I got some questions here. Does God care if we even have a good sex life? Is He concerned about this? Well, I think that noise got better. Thanks, guys. I don't know what that was. Does He care? Is He interested? Is He interested in us desiring this thing? Is it important to Him? Is it wrong to desire a good sex life, like to want more? What about even before you're married? Is it wrong to want to have the ultimate sex life? Now, I'm not saying to engage in it at that point or to fantasize about it necessarily, but simply to have it in your consciousness that when I get married, I want to be walking into this ultimate sex life. Okay? And, yeah, okay. So is communion worship? Is communion, like the thing we do at church, communion? I'm talking about communion. Is that a form of worship somehow? Yes. Okay. It is, because when we do it, we are representing and we are symbolizing something bigger than what we're actually doing. And we're symbolizing something about God. It's something that God asked us to do in remembrance of Him and all this stuff, right? If communion is worship, sex is more. Sex is worship. Sex from foreplay to climax is loaded with so much symbolism. I could teach you worship. I can teach you personal relations. You already went there about knowing Him. I can teach you about dynamics between the church and its groom. You can peel that onion and peel. There is layers and layers and layers to this thing. It's beautiful. When God created this concept, I mean, after all, He made this thing. Even how it works and the things you're going to feel when you're doing it. That was His idea. And the thoughts that He had when He was designing that thing, I still don't even fully understand. I just want to... I expect... I'm 33. I expect to live a good old age of something else. But I expect as long as I live, I will continually find more truth, more dynamics, more stuff in this thing. So I believe God loves it when we pursue a greater sex life. Okay, here's some questions. I'm not looking for answers necessarily at this time. But I want you to exercise you just think about these things for a little bit. These questions here, I believe that when our young people get married, you should be able to ask them these questions, and they will, poof, they've got it. They'll tell you. They know exactly what it looks like, what does it take, and what it produces, besides children. Okay? And when I say what does it look like, I'm just talking about what is this dynamic? How would you describe this dynamic? By us not giving our teens this information, the devil has been filling in the details. And I'm going to look at that. I'm going to look at that here in a minute. Now this one I want some feedback on. If someone was to say sex equals, what comes to your mind? First thing that comes to your mind. If it makes you feel uncomfortable, say it anyway. Sex equals intimacy, relationship, fellowship, passion, fun. I was hoping to hear that one. Did someone say fun? You're my buddy. Pleasure. Worth. Unity. Soul connection. Okay. Love. This is good stuff. Okay, sounds like we could go for a while on that. What does society tell us? Society tells us sex equals climax. Now, this is a blanket statement and maybe an overgeneralization, and you can find, I was reading a psychologist article the other day, and he was actually saying that the reason we want to have sex with people instead of just masturbating, because we can feel the same sensations with another person as we can by ourselves, mostly. But the reason we're driven to want to have sex with other people is because we want to have a relationship with them. And I was like, man, that guy actually knows what he's talking about. He didn't even know what he was talking about. But by and large, most of our society isn't that smart. We get the idea that sex, the general theme, the general message out there is about sex. You have sex because of the experience that you're going to feel, the feeling you're going to get from it. The reason somebody masturbates is to experience a feeling. And most times, a person is having sex with another person just to experience that feeling. And so they'll masturbate when another person isn't available, by and large. Now, that's probably not by and large true in this room. I'm just talking to you in terms of society, the world out there, and what this mountain over here is trumpeting out there to our kids, to our teens, and actually to us when we were that age too. And us still to this day if we listen to it. I want to break this thing down a little bit here as we go on. I'm trying to make up time. Oops, wrong way. Can you tell who that is? What's his name? How did you know that? That's okay. He just died a little while ago. And so you probably read him on the news if you had never heard about him before. That is Hugh Hefner. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner fascinates me. Oops. Hugh Hefner was raised in a home, in a God-fearing, church-attending home. Unfortunately, it was mostly devoid of love and affection, and his mom wanted him to be a missionary. Now, you probably might think that's a Mennonite home, because that sounds like a lot of them. But it wasn't. It was Methodist. But he was not raised in debauchery. He was 18 years old when he first started masturbating, and he was 22 when he first had sex. This guy was not raised, did not grow up through his formative years, the guy that he made himself to be. So how did that happen? Well, those of us who understand, most of you will probably already see this thing. If he was raised in a home devoid of love and affection, he probably had some kind of massive father and mother wounds. The mother wounds typically drive a man to the sexual perversions that we know. He got married to his high school sweetheart, if I have the story right. They were married for 10 years. He went away to the army. While he was gone in the army, his wife cheated on him. In his own words, that changed him forever. Most likely, he was looking to that high school sweetheart and that wife to soothe that mother wound inside of him. And so when that thing turned around and crushed him, which he really needed healing anyway, he was going to the wrong place, he reinvented himself. He recorded a little video called A Note to Self. You probably go on YouTube and find it. And it's actually really interesting to see what he says about himself. But he talks about this. And he says he reinvented himself. He actually says he reinvented himself 2 or 3 times throughout his life. Hugh Hefner was a missionary. It is my passion to be the missionary for the same thing that he was over on this mountain. Like, that's a really bold thing to say, but it's actually true. I actually feel that way. Hugh took the idea that the ultimate sex life was about climax and about a feeling. If you want the ultimate sex life, it's about experiencing that thing. And to experience that thing, this is how you get there. And he created the Playboy lifestyle of women and lots of sex. The Playboy lifestyle did not exist before Hugh Hefner. That was him. That was his creation. He marketed it to the American people, and they bought it hook, line, and sinker. And the idea that he marketed was that have sex, experience that feeling. That is the ultimate, and the more of it you can have, the more ultimate it can be. It is fun. You have sex for fun. He was partly right, but he was leaving out way too much. The thing that we have in common with Hugh Hefner was a desire for the ultimate sex life, for a fulfilling sex life. The thing that Hugh Hefner was experiencing that would soothe his mother wound chemically was endorphins. That will soothe the mother wound. You can get that from a number of different things. I was doing a little research on that, and you can actually get it from eating hot peppers. Like those of you who know me know I do not like spicy food, and I thought that was weird. Exercise will give them to you too, but sex will also give you a massive amount of endorphins. And that will soothe this mother wound. It will make it feel a little bit better, but it will not heal it, and it will quickly fade away, and you'll want more numbing. Hugh said about himself, he said, millions of readers will aspire to live the Playboy lifestyle. He says, you will challenge them to question what they believe about sex and sexuality, about personal freedom and civil rights. Asking the world to change is hard, but don't worry, you will be up for the fight, and more importantly, you will prevail. It's his own words, and he did prevail. Okay. Who benefits from this kind of an experience? Having sex for a feeling. Having sex for climax. Who benefits from that? It's a 2-letter word, and it's me. I am at the center of that. When you have sex for that reason, and when you masturbate for that reason, you are doing the same thing. It's an experience that you receive. So I was going to say earlier that a lot of the stuff I'm going to be talking, or some of the stuff I'm going to start out with here are super basic, super simple. But I kind of feel like I just need to run over it as quickly as I can to make sure we're all on the same platform and know what we're talking about. Okay? So this whole concept is, and the other thing for me, all of us speakers up here, I've noticed, we all have stories. We have histories. We're not born with this spiritual spoon in our mouth. Like the stuff we're talking about actually came from some really nasty, icky stuff we experienced. Okay, and that's definitely my story. This women, so Hugh basically marketed this and built his empire by objectifying women. Now I kind of understood this objectifying women thing about like this. And the last couple of years, all of a sudden, God has been like really increasing my understanding. And all of a sudden, I realized I was standing inside a circle. Oops. I think I'll go ahead and get out of here a while. But this is the idea. The objectifying women. So basically then, in this case, when sex is about a feeling, this woman is a pathway to get there. She will provide you an experience. Okay? There was a time in my life when I looked at a woman and I automatically saw her as an object, and I knew it. For years I did it and I didn't know it. Then it got to a point where I knew it. I'm like, huh. So that's basically when you have sex for climax and to experience a feeling, the woman or the person that you're having sex with is simply a pathway. She's an object. When this is the case, women are fun. They are to be enjoyed. They provide you experience. And according to Hugh, you can thereby have a fulfilling sex life. As a thing, when a woman is a thing, there is all of a sudden then a constant push for more, for the perfect body, for more women, for another one. That's the thing that supports porn. It is this pipeline that will give you perfect women, more women, another one. Hugh Hefner, he promoted this thing and marketed it as well. That's the whole thing this thing is built around. Now, here is where it got really personal for me. We have a young Mennonite man and woman who have been courting, and they've kept themselves pure for the most part. They haven't had sex yet. And they get married, and they actually had good parents who taught them the definition of the three-letter word that starts with S and ends in X, and they know actually what you have to do to get pregnant and what all happens and blah, blah, blah. But they haven't really had anybody talk to them about the ultimate sex life, what it takes, how you get there, what it looks like, those questions, right? And so to answer to those questions specifically have been kind of coming from this mountain over here. Maybe the guy, he's masturbated a few times, he's seen a little bit of pornography, or maybe a lot. But they both know somewhere in the back of their mind that sex is for fun. There is fun that you can have through this thing, and they're looking forward. They're not allowed to do this thing yet, but they're really looking forward until they qualify and they can start trying this thing. And so they get married, and they start experimenting for a little while, and after a while it is fun. Took them longer than they thought it would, but they're getting there. As you follow this thing through, they are actually having sex for fun. There has been this thing in the back of their mind, this enjoyable thing, and they've been wanting to get there, and now they can. So now they're getting there. And they're missing what we're going to talk about in a bit. And that's all of a sudden when I realized that for years after my marriage, I wasn't really abusing my wife. I mean, it was all good stuff. But I was actually having sex for the feeling I got from it. And it's okay, because we're taught men need a release and all this, this is a natural thing, blah, 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 blah. Which part of all that's true. But when the other part, when it's simply this, we're out of balance. Way too far. Okay. Now we're going to talk about God's model. I'm going to introduce you to Albert. He is about 43, I'm going to say. Albert is single and satisfied. He has been walking along through life, and he is doing good, and he is feeling good. And he is not married. He's single, I said. When he was younger, he had thought about marriage. He would have kind of liked to. It never really worked out. But at this point, that's not on his radar. So it's just life's going pretty good for him. It just looks like that, doesn't it? Well, one day, he's walking along, and he notices Anna. Albert's cruising along, and here's Anna over here in the corner. And there is something about Anna that makes something feel good inside him. He's like, oh. And so he notices this girl. He gets to notice her a little bit, and he's like, I want to spend some more time with Anna. Now I'm cruising through this story because I'm running out of time. He notices Anna, and finally he makes a move. After 40-some years, he works up the nerve, and he goes to Anna, and he says, hey, he's like, would you like to go out to dinner with me? I'd like to start a relationship with you. So he makes a move, right? And when he makes this move, Anna's like, well, I've actually been feeling the same thing inside me, and I would be more than happy to do that. And she makes a move over beside him. Okay. So now they're dating, and they go out to dinner, and they're just enjoying this thing like all over again, right? They're 40-some, but this is just like brand new stuff. And as they get to know one another and they spend time, there's this bond that begins to form between them. And their souls begin to knit. Now, your soul is your mind and your will and your emotions, your feelings, your passions, your desires, the things you want to go for, what have you. That's your soul. And those things begin to knit. And there begins to be a bond between them. And it quickly comes to the point where Albert's like, I cannot imagine spending my life without you. I want to share the rest of my life with you, Anna. Would you do that? And she says, why, I feel the same way. Absolutely. And so they are betrothed. They are engaged. Now, here's where I'm going to start unpacking some brand new stuff for you. You can think about. that I have actually never heard anybody else talk about or say. So I hope you agree with me. If not, I'll go back to Tennessee. By the way, I wanted to say this. I came up from Tennessee with an entourage of 4 other guys. I am really honored. I wanted to honor them for doing that with me. There's 2 big, scary-looking dudes. There's one just scary-looking dude. And there's one that's not big or scary. He's the one that walks in front. And the other guys just walk behind him. So I'm just really excited to have them and have them here. It's been really fun to travel up here. They are tough. They left at 11 o'clock, not last night, but the night before. We drove all night, ate 1 meal, and we're here. Like, with no naps. I got an hour nap. They didn't. They didn't eat any food other than that 1 meal until last night after. So anyway, they're like, I think so. I'm expecting a ride back, yeah. So anyway, I wanted to take a quick minute to honor them. Okay, so back to Albert and Anna. They're engaged. They're betrothed. There is a connection in their soul level. There is not a connection yet in the spirit level where God joined them and made them one. And there is not connection yet in the physical where they're manifesting that spirit connection and having sex. Okay? The way we understand it is the next thing that happens is they get married. They have a wedding. I was just at a wedding not too long ago. I had to bite my tongue. The guy that was preaching the sermon was a good guy. I actually like him, okay, for real. Like, he seems pretty cool. I think I could actually, I don't know him, but I think I could actually hang around him, and we would have a lot in common. But there was one thing that he was mistaken on. And he went on, and it was this. And by the way, I've got a lot of things I'm mistaken on too, so that's fine. It doesn't bother me that he was mistaken on this thing. But here we're sitting in a wedding, and he's talking about this thing, and he's saying, there's something special that's going to happen today in this ceremony as this couple is saying their vows, and we kneel down for this consecration prayer that God is going to be joined together, a man and a woman, and making them one. And I'm thinking, where do you get that? Because as near as I understand it, God doesn't see it that way. In fact, I don't even know. I think he probably sees the wedding because he sees everything that happened, but I don't think that ceremony means anything to him. And you're like, whoa, dude, what in the world are you saying? This is what I'm saying. In Jesus' day, so this idea that a wedding, that a man and women are joined in a ceremony, is a product of the Roman Catholic Church. You will not find it before then, and you definitely won't find it in Scripture. Marriage vows, if you research them, you might get back to the 1300s. Most of them came from the 1500s. Before that, they didn't exist. The vows that you said whenever you got married came from those vows that were cooked up by the church back in the 1500s. Now, hang on a minute. I'm not nullifying your marriage, okay? Your marriage is valid. But I'm just saying, I think maybe we've been wrong on something for a while. In Jesus' day, there is a man and a woman. It's usually arranged by the parents, although the children were involved. It wasn't forced. They got betrothed, and they promised themselves one to another. It's the same thing we do when we get engaged. We make a commitment one to another. The man left, and he went to prepare a place in his father's house. Does this sound like familiar language to you? But that's not the topic. He went to prepare a place. It was usually about a year. And by the way, he could not say when he was ready, when his house was done, when it was full preparations. He did not say when he went back to get his wife. His father would tell him that. And Jesus said, I don't know. Only my Father knows when I'm going to come back. Oh, boy. That is not the topic. Stay focused, James. We heard that our influence is limited last night. Stay focused, right? So, then after this year, unannounced, the man would go back to get his wife, or his bride, and they would have this procession back to where the feast, it was going to be a 7-day feast, right? How about receptions like that again, right? 7 days, woo, like the whole town, okay? Towns are bigger these days, so that would be tough. But anyway, the first thing they did when they got back to the location where the wedding celebration was going to happen, there is a room prepared. The first thing that man and woman did is they went in that room and they had sex. There was attendants usually that stood outside the room, and when they were done having sex, they would bring the sheet out that had the blood on it from her losing her virginity and show it to the attendants, and it was witnessed. That's where we get our idea of attendance in a bridal party to this day. That was witnessed. That was a huge deal that that woman was a virgin. If she wasn't, the man could divorce her and let her go. No strings attached. He could still keep her even if she wasn't. He didn't have to let her go, but he had the option. But if she was a virgin, they were husband and wife right there. Yes, sir.
Just to say, I experienced exactly that in Morocco. They still practice that same.
Awesome! This guy's my hero! So I was just going to say that there are governments to this day that recognize this thing. Okay, so let me finish my thought real quick yet. So then, at that moment when that man in marriage, sex is marriage. When you have sex, after a man and woman are engaged, the next time they have sex, as near as I can tell from what God sees, the next time they have sex, He joins them and they are man and wife. I submit to you that after a man and woman are engaged, they can no longer commit fornication. Now, I know our social standards aren't real, so I'm not really necessarily saying to go wreck your social standards around here, but I am teaching something that I think is real that God sees, okay? Fornication is having sex with someone that you're not committed to outside of an engagement. If that happens, it's called fornication. In the Bible, there was penalty for that. You could avoid some of that penalty if you got married. So like if you went ahead and called that your marriage, and yes, we will be one. If you wanted not to be one, there was penalty. I'm not sure if it was death penalty or not, but there was penalty for that. Today, praise Jesus, we can cut those soul ties off if we've had sex with someone that we are not committed to before we were married. But after you're engaged, in God's eyes, it's not fornication. That's when marriage happens. That's the way it was in Jesus' day when they had weddings. And to this day, in some cultures, in Morocco, you said, right? They still see it that way. I had buddies, not Christian men, but they were getting Philippine wives. And when they went to the Philippines to get a wife, they had to prove up, basically they had to do a legal engagement. They had to prove up they're going to take care of her, they're going to feed her, they're going to house her, they weren't going to divorce her in so many years, blah, blah, blah. I forget what it was. But they could not leave with her as their wife until they booked a motel room and consummated the marriage. That government recognized that sex equals marriage. In Montana, I'm not sure when the law was changed, it's not true to this day, but it was true for a long time, that if you found a woman, took her home with you and had sex with her, one night she could take half your stuff. Ooh, Leroy says. No kidding. Montana got it. They understood this thing we're talking about. What I'm telling you is there are governments in this world to this day that understand this even better than we do. Okay, forgive us, Lord. What I am saying to you is that, it sounds like I'm hammering on weddings. Weddings are really cool, okay? But I really want us to understand when that couple walks out, they're not actually one until they start having sex. If you forget everything else I say this morning, remember this. Sex is a oneness exercise. It is not a climax exercise. Sex is a oneness exercise. Sex is manifesting in the physical what is happening when you got married in the spiritual, or what is already true. There's a connection. When you have sex with someone, it doesn't matter if you paid her money to have sex with her and you never see her again, there's a bit of a connection that happens in the spirit world. We have taken the concept that when an engaged man and woman have sex together, that God joins them. We have taken that concept and removed it from that act of sex and placed it in a ceremony that the church oversees. Like, does that sound like the devil or what? We have devalued the act of sex tremendously. I'm not okay with that. Sex is a oneness exercise. Sex is manifesting the basic mechanics of having sex is a struggle for more oneness. Like God even made it look like that. That's what it is. So, oneness is the objective. Okay. When you remember I had climax up here, right? Society tells us sex is about climax. When you make sex about oneness, and you have sex because of oneness with your wife, all of a sudden then climax is produced by oneness. And climax is a byproduct, essentially, of oneness. But the act of sex is about oneness. When you can wrap your arms around this and have sex with your wife, and with oneness as the objective, it will take you to places that you did not go before. When you have sex, even if, I don't have time to go into it, when you have greater desire, lesser desire partners and how to make this all work. But let's say you're having sex and one of you isn't necessarily feeling in the mood, but the other one is, but you're both willing to go ahead and do this thing, and the other partner is simply doing this thing with you Because of the oneness exercise that is, it's still fun, even if climax isn't on the part of the picture. It's about oneness. And I can give you testimony of people when they have gotten their arms wrapped around this thing who had previously had trouble with experiencing orgasm. And when this thing became only just about oneness, looking one another in the eye and experience oneness with my partner, all of a sudden climax was unlocked. And this climax thing where we thought we were getting to somewhere before, when we all of a sudden make it about oneness, this thing will take you places you didn't know existed. It is the ultimate sex life. This is the dynamic, this is the concept that we need to get in our heads, and we need to be teaching our teens, actually. Okay. Society, okay, so here's a question for you. Whose job is it in establishing this oneness platform? The men. That's exactly right. This thing is on our shoulders. Now, I'm going to borrow something from Luke. He had that diagram of the circle about the serving leadership journey. The first one was leading self. The first thing we need to do is take care of our junk. Clean out from underneath the bed. You will not get anywhere on this oneness thing with a bunch of stuff under the bed. First of all, work on you. Learn how to lead self. Get yourself cleaned up. I don't care where you have to go, who you have to sit underneath the teaching of, who you need to counsel with, Get real about that thing, because you won't get anywhere until you get that fixed. The next thing is to draw your wife into this thing. I have a verse next. This verse was already read. Who was it? Was that you? Yeah. Husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it, that he might cleanse, that he might sanctify, and cleanse her with the washing of the word, that he might present her to himself a glorious bride, not having anything wrong with her, but being perfect, holy, without blemish. So if you want a bride, a woman, to experience this beautiful oneness thing, guess whose job it is to get her there? You. Now, you don't go after it with a sledgehammer. How does Jesus do it? He is this gentlemanly, loving, wooing, drawing, loving. If you want to know how to do this thing for your wife, learn it from Jesus. I do not have time to unpack this whole thing for you, other than to point you in the right direction, and that's the right direction. If you're like, but James, you don't realize my wife has issues. And they require tissues. She was abused. Oh my goodness, she is a mess. You married her. Like, for real. Jesus chose his bride, and she's got issues. And he doesn't turn his back. He even says, and I think it's in the Old Testament, yea, though you have divorced me many times, yet I will again take you back. It might have been Hosea, because Hosea had to marry a prostitute. I'm not sure if that was where it was or not. Hosea had to marry a prostitute that went around and ran around with other men after they were married, and he had to go to the auction block where men were buying prostitutes and buy her back. And God had Hosea do that. I think it was Hosea. God had Hosea do that to illustrate how he is towards his bride. Whoa. Do you get that weight? Oh, my word. Thank you, Jesus. So that's my challenge for you, to set you on that journey. To first of all start with yourself and that grace thing. Have Jesus write all kinds of things in your heart to where you're as close to Jesus as you can possibly get. Then begin to lead your wife into this thing to where she can get as close as she can possibly get to the bride that God has for her to be for you. That's our job. That's what marriage is. So that's one reason we talk about sex-led leadership, because it is actually the first place where we walk into leadership. So in this, borrowing Luke's diagram here of leading self, then leading another, I'm calling that our wife, then leading a team, I'm calling that our family, and then leading an organization. I don't know, maybe that's your business, your workplace, whatever your responsibilities are outside of the home. Even if you don't own a business and you just work, it's okay. You've got responsibilities outside the home. Luke, I did not talk to Luke about this, but he would probably agree with me that if you do not, like the leading self, if you do not get that one right, your authority or your leadership in the other areas won't happen either. The level of authority that you walk in the first block directly affects the level of authority you will walk in the second block, and so on and so forth. And so I'm talking to you about sex, and I'm telling you that this involves the very first block. And if you're interested in walking in leadership and authority in life, you need to get this one right first. If you walk into life and you walk into the workplace and into the society and your marriage is a wreck and you're a wreck and you got issues and maybe you don't even know it, or maybe you don't know it and you don't care, or you think you've got your issues worked out but your wife has issues and it's not getting anywhere and your sex life is a wreck, but you think it's not your fault, when you walk into the workplace, that will affect your effectiveness. You cannot escape that. However, if you flip it around, and you are fulfilling the things that Christ has you to fulfill, and you are loving your wife as Christ loved the church, you will walk into that workplace a man with confidence. And I was just reading a couple of days ago studies and statistics how people who have sex more often make more money than people who have less sex. It's true. It's statistically proven by secular statisticians, whatever they call them. And then at the end of the article, they're like, we're not sure if it's boldness from the workplace that why they have more sex or if it's something to do with the person. And I'm like, okay, now you've lost it. But there is a connection. And it's what I'm talking about here. When you walk in authority and in leadership in this area, it will affect the rest of your life. And if you are not walking in authority and leadership in this area of your life, it will affect your other places of influence. So that's my challenge to you. I kind of feel bad for you because I just kind of fed you with a fire hose and said, here it is, go get it. And remember I said that we should be able to teach our kids what the ultimate sex looks like, how you get there, what it produces, and what it produces is fulfillment. You can't go into this thing with woundedness and expect it to work, because that wound needs to be healed first for the real thing to happen for us to experience this thing and so on. But this is my burden and my passion. My vision is that every single one of God's people should be able to walk around and be able to dump out of their bucket and create a mountain of information about sex and the ultimate sex life as big as the devil's mountain. Amen? Amen. Because it should be true in your life, and you should be able to propagate it, teach your children and others. And I actually think that if we all walk in that thing, and if that was totally normal, and we were in a perfect world and we all had this thing, I think the world would be a different place. Number one, the devil wouldn't have the opportunity to make this massive mountain like he has been being able to. And I said that my passion is to be as much of a missionary about sex as Hugh Hefner. I'm serious. This is what I'm talking about. You actually don't even have to be a Christian for this stuff to work. Like if you strip Christ out of it and just make it still about oneness and relationship, it works for secular psychologists. Okay? You could go and have this talk in a university that does not recognize God. And there would be people there that would get it. Now, of course, when you talk about it, you're like a half a breath away of bringing Christ all over the thing. But what I'm telling you is that the real thing and the authentic thing that God gave us, we can take to the world. And we don't even need for them to be Christians for them to make sense of it. There's a lot of power there. Of course, once they make sense of it, wow, that's a powerful evangelism tool, huh? Woo! I just put that together right now. Anyway, there's going to be small groups. I'm not sure. My time is up. Are we going for a break? What's the deal here next? Are you going to come up here and okay, you can come on up here, Ryan. I'm pretty much done. There's going to be small groups. I'm not sure what's going to happen in those small groups exactly. Someone had said something to me about coming up with a printout or a handout about questions that can be used for discussion in your small group. I did not print anything off, but this is what I have. Maybe you want to snap a picture of it or write it down. And if there's time in the small groups, maybe you guys can spend some time answering those questions with what the story of your life has been and where you want to go with the story of your life. But these are like real questions, like why do I have sex? You know, some of these things to examine this thing. I'm done, Ryan. Go ahead.
Hey, All right, let's give James a big hand for taking on a tough subject. We appreciate that very, very much. Thank you, James.